Hey everyone, welcome back to the Torana Resurrection build series. I'm Matt Barnsley from the Render Garage and we are back in my shed talking about brakes today. So we've seen bits and bobs throughout the build series of what I'm doing with my brakes, but this episode today is dedicated to just the brakes. So I'm going to be showing piece by piece everything that I've done to build the kit in the Torana. All right, so what have I got here in front of me? First one here, excuse it being rusty, it's been outside, but this is the original LH LX Torana front disc brake. So it's a 256mm solid disc rotor. They work pretty well for like a non-performance Torana, not a problem at all. So next up, we've got the HQ to HZ disc brakes. These are vented, so really good upgrade. These are the same disc brakes that were on the L34 and A9X Toranas. This is basically the same as what Brocky had at Bathurst. They're a good upgrade. These are a 276mm rotor, but vented as I said before. They're both single piston calipers. They work pretty good. These are a really good upgrade for a performance Torana and have been for a long time. That's what used to be on this car, was this setup, and it worked really well. But I wanted to go bigger and better. So this is a 365mm rotor, a big 4-piston caliper, and these are my rear brakes. So let me get the front brakes. These are my front brakes. The rotor is actually slightly smaller at 362mm, but the caliper itself still being 4-piston, bigger pistons and way more braking performance. Funny thing about all this is a standard Torana rim. This is what would have come on my car when it rolled off the factory. They're 13-inch rims. And if we look at the rear one, for instance, this actually measures over 14 inches. So it's actually bigger than the wheel that would have come from factory, including the A9X, because the A9X ran a 14-inch wheel, and this is 14.3 inches or something, or whatever 365mm converts to in inches. Now, if you're doing Torana brakes today, there's a huge menu of choices to choose from. So why did I choose these ones? The standard Torana brakes work perfectly fine on a relatively stock and original car, no problems at all. The HQ brake upgrade is, to be honest, a very good upgrade. I could have just put some discs on the rear and all would have been pretty good. There's also the Wilwood 4-piston and 6-piston conversion. Again, tried and true, work really well, but I wanted to do something different. I thought, why not go with the biggest OE brake brand in the world, which is Brembo. And these calipers came off the last and greatest Holden Commodore ever made, which is the VF Series 2 Redline edition. It was also on the Motorsport Magnum and Director Final Edition cars that came out. So these are the biggest and best brakes that were ever fitted to a factory Holden Commodore built in Australia. And before people out there say, what about HSV? Technically, they're not Holdens or Commodores, they're Club Sports, GTSs. Anyway, we won't go there. I needed something that was also going to fit under the 18-inch wheels that I put on the car, and I was never going to go bigger than 18-inch wheels on the car. Now, let's talk about the rotors themselves. The rotors aren't off a VF Commodore. I needed a different setup to suit the car. We'll deep dive a little bit more into the rotors when I'm putting them on the car, but high level overview, the rears are off a Gen 5 Camaro, and the fronts are off a VY, VZ, HSV, the one that had the Harrop big brake package. The rotors themselves are from Disc Brakes Australia. They have kindly partnered up with us on the build to get these on the car. These are basically some of the best brakes that they actually sell. But again, we'll deep dive a little bit more when they're on the car. Now, I know one thing that probably puts a lot of people off going down this path, putting these style brakes on Toranas, is I think it's the knowledge. The Wilwood packages are fantastic because there's companies out there that have worked out perfect kits that you can basically bolt them straight on without any issue. With the help of a few other people out there, I've been able to work out the best way to basically seamlessly fit this to the car without any wild modifications. And of course, I didn't figure this conversion out alone. I had some help. There's a big thanks to Baden O'Neill and Rod Haylock. They gave me the knowledge of what I needed to do to make this fit. I think Baden worked it out himself first. He passed the information on to Rod, and then Rod's passed it on to me. And then I'm making this video now to help everyone out there who wants to do a conversion like this. And now for the rears. So as I mentioned before, these same rear calipers were also found on Gen 5 Camaros, and the rotor itself is off a Gen 5 Camaro as well. The beauty of that is there's lots of people in the US who have wanted to fit these same brakes to the back of Camaros and other cars over there. So I stumbled across a website called Big Brake Upgrade, and I got talking with Scott. His knowledge has basically allowed me to fit these to the back of my car. So we'll deep dive into all that a little bit later when we get to the car, but it just shows to show that there is plenty of knowledge out there, and I've just kind of joined the dots, and hopefully this video helps other people who want to do the same sort of brake upgrade on their car piece it all together. Enough talking up here on the bench. Let's get over to the car over here and we'll start piecing it all together, and I'll show you how it works. Okay, back over at the car here, I'll give you a quick run through of what we've got set up here already. These are conversion hubs. So basically it is Commodore style brakes mounted to your factory HQ or Torana stub axles. On this car, I'm running HQ stub axles. I've also got the A9X steering arm, which helps with bump steer and stuff. I've got my Magnum suspension lower control arm in at the moment. The upper one I haven't got in yet because I need to drop the K-frame. It is sitting here ready to go in. So that is a future job. So I guess the most important piece of the puzzle here, which probably needed the most work on my end, is this adapter bracket to mount the caliper to the factory stub axle. This is where I got a lot of help from Baden and Rod, we mentioned before. So they sent me this wooden one, which Baden had created to work out it all on his car. And then he sent it to Rod, and then Rod sent it to me. This was actually set up for an LX Torana stub axle, and that mounts in slightly different locations. So I had to make a few adjustments, and I 3D printed a few. These are just some of my trial ones that I did. But we then had to work out exactly how this would work. The beauty of a 3D printer, this took about 20 minutes to print off, and I could quickly manipulate things, change bolt holes, work it all out, and go, you know what, that is going to work perfectly. And then I created this. So this is made out of 7075 billet aluminium. That's like an aerospace grade aluminium. So it's super strong, super durable, perfect for this application. It's also nice and light. And this has some little standoffs just to center the caliper over the rotor. So it's absolutely perfect, and I get perfect, like really good brake pad alignments. Everything's all spot on. So we had to dial that in. It just bolts on from the back using the factory bolts in the stub axle. One last thing about the bracket. So these ones are definitely to suit HQ to HZ stub axles. They're slightly different to what Torana stub axle bolt locations and everything are. So it would be different. If anyone's out there interested in a set of these, reach out, because I might be able to get some more made of these. So reach out if you're interested. And if you're looking for Torana ones, reach out as well. I might be able to do something there. We might be able to prototype one and get one right. All right, next step, let's get the rotors on. So let's talk calipers. For these calipers, I needed a 32 mil thick rotor, and the offset also had to be right. So when it mounted up, the caliper located centrally over here. So my adapter bracket was able to do a little bit of that, but most of the work also had to be done by this off-the-shelf one. So because this kit is for basically VT to VZ brakes on the Toranas and HQs, it actually then meant, because this is a VT to VZ HSV brake, it essentially lines it all up and puts it in the right spot. So clever thinking from Baden and Rod and all the guys that worked that out. So a few of you might have noticed me say that I've got HQ stud pattern, and these are Commodore brakes, which means these holes are to suit Commodore and not HQ. So HQ stud pattern in millimeters is 120.65 by 5 mil, and Commodore is 120 by 5. What that actually equates to is 0.3 of a millimeter difference on each stud, which sounds very minor. On a stud-centric wheel bolting on, that's a big no-no because you can snap studs. But because the brakes are now hub-centric, there's no pressure on the studs because of this mismatch. These holes are actually drilled a little bit bigger than standard anyway, which allows it all to slip on. And once we locate it, like so, it locates on the spigot anyway, and everything's all centrally located. Now it's time to put the calipers on. I've got a set of DBA Extreme brake pads in here now as well, which is perfect for the style of build that I'm doing. So I want track, street performance. These should be spot on. The calipers take an M14 bolt on the back. I've gone for a 12.9 rated bolt purely because I want it to be as strong as possible. That's not, I don't want to bolt these up at 8,000 Newton meters of torque. There's the shear strength in the bolt. So basically how strong the bolt is from snapping off. That's why I want the higher rating from. I don't want to over tighten this into the aluminium caliper because that'll just thread it straight away. But the strength is inside the bolt itself. So it bolts in from the back. So I thought I'd quickly mention the brake hoses I'm planning to go as well. Again, sticking with the OE theme, I thought let's try a set of factory VF Commodore brake lines, mainly because it's an off-the-shelf sort of thing that I can buy. So these are like aftermarket braided ones. But what I like about them is all the fittings on the back. They're nice and tight to the body. I was gonna get custom ones made up, but I thought let's just try these first off. And I reckon these are gonna work a treat. The length was basically the same as the standard Torana one. And the plan is, the ends are different. So these are more like metric ends, whereas the standard Torana ones are imperial. But I'm gonna be running new brake lines anyway. But I'm gonna run them for the time being in the factory locations, and this should be able to tuck nicely out of the way. I'm gonna run some new brake lines in the engine bay. I've got to run some new brake lines down the back as well. I've got a new master cylinder, so I've ditched the proportioning valve. So we'll talk about that next, and then we'll go on to the back. All right, so before we move to the back of the car, I thought I would talk about my master cylinder and brake booster setup. Excuse the very messy engine bay. It literally has not been touched, but let's just focus on the brakes for now. So I've got a double diaphragm booster here, but this has actually been converted by Hydroboost. So the back part is factory Torana still, and the front part is Commodore. So it's off I believe, a VZ era Commodore, because this master cylinder is off a VT to VZ. It ditches the proportioning valve, so that's why all my old lines are still just sitting here, because I need to remake all those. But it ditches the proportioning valve that used to sit over here, sorry. So I need to make some new brake lines to mount up to all the new locations. But the important part about this is because I've got bigger brakes with 4-piston calipers, it needs to move more brake fluid to actually make the brakes work. So this was the same as what was used on VT, VZ, HSVs. So this will provide the right amount of brake fluid movement for it to work. This is a genuine Bosch unit. So again, sticking with that OE feel, I've got OE master cylinder with OE brake booster. It's all those little things that hopefully create a hassle-free brake system and mainly make it safe. Like the brakes are something that you really shouldn't skimp on, and that's where I really like the idea of going factory OE, because they've done thousands and thousands of hours of testing to make sure it's right. So anyway, genuine Bosch unit. Again, I'll put the part numbers and stuff of everything that I've got in the description. So if you're interested and looking for the exact same setup, it'll be all in the description. So now let's go have a look at the back of the car. And there's one look of the engine bay as it is currently. I've been doing some 3D scanning for something that you'll see in a future episode. So good time to say, if you're not already, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, because there's some more really cool stuff coming on the car. Okay, so we're at the rear now. Now, I know a lot of people avoid putting disc brakes or doing anything extravagant on the rear of most old cars, really, because of the handbrake setup. Some people just ditch the handbrake altogether and just hope they don't need it. Others just don't do the change because they don't know how the factory handbrake's gonna work. Well, this is the solution that I found. I came across bigbrakeupgrade.com, which is in the United States, and I spoke with Scott there, and he'd developed this kit to suit the exact brakes that I was using, which are the Brembo brakes from the Gen 5 Camaro, of course, the VF Commodore, and is also on a few other cars. But he'd basically worked out a kit where he could mix and match OE parts. So he found a backing plate off, I'm assuming, a Camaro. I think he was actually still able to get them from GM up until just a couple of months ago as genuine parts. All the brake housing and stuff in here. So when the brake rotor bolts on, it's got all the handbrake set up on the inside of there. And on the back side, which I'll show you from behind, it connects all up to the standard Torana locations. And I managed to find a handbrake cable that suited Commodore style rear ends, which is the same as were on these brakes. So I'm hoping, I haven't finished connecting all my foot pedal back up, but it's loosely connected in here and it looks like it'll work absolutely spot on. So I'm very happy with that. As we spoke about before with the brakes, so I've got the caliper here and they are hub-centric. So the opening on the rotor here was slightly different to what my 9-inch ends were. So I got some little adapters made up to basically locate it absolutely perfectly on here. So I'll put the rotor on. And as you can see, that now lines up perfectly with my little adapter in there, which makes everything hunky-dory. Okay, so just like the front, I've got extreme performance brake pads in here. It's the same 4000 series rear discs. I'll put all the part numbers and stuff in the description. So if you're looking to make the exact same kit as this, everything will be in the description. I can't recommend the DBA gear high enough. It is beautiful, really well built, Australian company. What more could you ask for? I've had to make a couple of little shims, just similar to the front, just to locate the caliper perfectly centered to the disc. So basically I just space it off. So Scott's brackets come with the mounting points for the calipers, and it just slides in. Again, so Scott supplies all the bolts to mount the calipers on, which makes things really easy. You basically just give Scott all your specs, what your end plates and stuff on your diff are. And it doesn't have to just be for a 9-inch. He does kits for all different styles. Tighten these up. I'll go all around again and do all my proper torque settings later. But this is just to quickly show you in this video how simple this bolt-on base. It's a bolt-on conversion. It's that simple once you get everything right. There are the rears essentially done. Again, they look brilliant. I'm so happy with how well these kind of all just came together. I guess another thing that a few people might be asking the question for is roughly what sort of costs does this all take? I guess I got my Brembos off Marketplace. I got a pretty good deal on them. They pop up, full sets pop up here and there. You could either just do the fronts, you can do the full kit. They seem to be about, I don't know, $1,500 for a used set. Rotors and all the rotors and brake pads and stuff are things you need to buy. You need pin kits for the brake pads, same front and rear. I would say that it's probably about the same price as if you were to go buy a Willwood kit from one of the other guys selling the stuff out there. But I reckon this is heaps better than what the Willwood kit would be. There is a little bit of mucking around with brake lines and stuff. So I'm gonna, just because I want to, I'm gonna be making new brake lines front to rear. I've got all this stuff to bend everything up. So once that's all done, it's all reasonably straightforward. I can almost reuse some of the stuff in the back here, but I just got to make new fittings to bolt up to the back of these. Fronts we've run through before. Master cylinder, because I'm using the Bosch style VT master cylinder. Again, factory gear gives you the factory reliability as well. When you start buying the aftermarket stuff, yes, sometimes it's really good, but sometimes you can also cop a bit of that quality that everyone knows about. All right, so this is all on now. I reckon it's time to bolt a wheel on and show you how good it looks with the wheel on. So let's do that. How good does that look? Absolutely love how big they are. They just fill up these wheels perfectly. Yes, for everyone that keeps asking, the wheels, there'll be some information very soon on the wheels, and we might be able to buy your own set from very, very soon. All right, so I've also put the front one back on. Super happy with how everything bolts up. Hopefully this has helped anyone out there who might be interested in doing a similar conversion on their car. Thanks again to Disc Brakes Australia, DBA, for supplying the rotors and brake pads. It's having awesome partners like that helps turn this build into something really special. We're getting very close to that first drive, I guess you call it. It'll be literally a drive out of the shed. So after I've got all the brake lines and stuff sorted, I've got to move on to the fuel system. I've currently got the drop tank out of the car. You might have seen it in the background as some photos. I'm trying to work out the fuel lines and making sure I'm future-proofing for my engine upgrades at the same time as being able to get it ready to fire up again for the first time in a very long time. So once I've got it at that stage, which is going to be in the next video, hopefully we'll hear it fire it up and I can drive it out of this shed for the first time in a very long time. Not quite ready for a drive around the block or anything like that, but baby steps. Hopefully you've enjoyed this episode today. If you are already subscribed, thank you very much. Your support means the world and it really helps drive this build forward and make it as good as possible. If you're not subscribed, please, it doesn't cost anything. Hit the subscribe button, follow along. We've got lots more updates, hopefully like in-depth ones like this. Now the car's home, I can go in a little bit more depth and show things off. So we've still got all the engine upgrades to do. There's still lots coming in the future on the build. Happy to go deep dives into anything that anyone out there is interested in. So drop a comment if you want me to talk about anything else on the build that I haven't really covered in depth like this before, and I've only kind of passed over in previous episodes. So thanks again for joining us. And as I always say, go all in, build something incredible and live your dream. I'll see you in the next one.